For years now, something really strange has been happening to American diplomats, spies, and military folks serving overseas. They're being struck down almost out of nowhere by mysterious illness. And the thing is, it has no clear cause, but it leaves behind this trail of debilitating, totally life-altering symptoms. This is the story of a potential invisible weapon, a huge geopolitical mystery, and the very real human cost of what we've all come to know as Havana syndrome. So let me just paint you a picture. Imagine you're a senior CIA officer, a guy who's been in war zones in Iraq and Afghanistan. You're on a trip to Moscow in 2017. You go to sleep in your hotel, and you wake up in the middle of an absolute nightmare. Well, that is exactly what happened to Mark Palmer Papuas. He said he'd been shot at. He'd risked his life for his country countless times. But this experience, in his hotel room, he called it one of the most terrifying moments of his entire life. Now, you might think, okay, maybe it was just bad food poisoning, right? That's actually what he suspected at first. But nope. Turns out, Mark's ordeal wasn't some isolated thing. It was just a preview of a phenomenon that would soon hit hundreds of U.S. officials all over the world. So that leads us to the crucial question, what exactly is this mysterious illness? What started with reports coming out of the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba, way back in 2016, pretty soon blew up into a global pattern. See, these weren't just random sicknesses. There was a very distinct set of symptoms. Officially, they're called anomalous health incidents, or AHIs for short, and they started popping up everywhere. China, Georgia, Poland, even right here on U.S. soil. So what does it actually feel like? Well, an intelligence community experts panel broke down the key features. It often kicks off with this sudden feeling of intense sound or pressure, sometimes focused on just one side of the head. Right away, victims get hit with vertigo, they lose their balance. But what comes next is the really devastating part: chronic, life-changing conditions. We're talking persistent headaches, serious trouble with memory, and a loss of high-level brain function that can stick around for years. The investigation pretty quickly focused on two completely different explanations. Polar opposites. On one hand, could this be a sophisticated, targeted attack by a foreign enemy? Or, on the other hand, is it a case of psychogenic illness? A physical sickness that's actually caused by extreme stress, spreading through this really tight-knit, high-stakes community. Okay, so the whole debate really boils down to these two competing theories. First, you have the directed energy attack. A big 2020 report from the National Academies of Sciences said that pulsed radio frequency energy, basically microwaves, is the most plausible mechanism. It would explain the weird sounds, the feeling of pressure, and all the neurological symptoms. Then you have the second theory, psychogenic illness. This suggests it's a functional neurological disorder that comes from extreme stress, kind of like what happened with the Moscow Eye, where embassy staff started getting nervous twitches. But experts like Dr. James Giordano are arguing, whoa, hang on a second, this is different. He points out that the folks who are victims of the Moscow Eye, yeah, they were known to be anxious and worried, but the victims of these new incidents, a lot of them weren't stressed or unhappy at all. In fact, many were top-performing officers who absolutely loved their jobs. So, with that psychogenic theory getting a lot of pushback, investigators started to focus on a state actor. And one country has a very long and very well-documented history with the exact technology in question: Russia. And look, this isn't science fiction. The idea of a microwave weapon has a long, documented history. From the 1950s all the way into the 70s, the Soviets were just bathing the U.S. Embassy in Moscow with microwaves. It was called the Moscow Signal. It got so bad that in 1975, President Ford actually had to formally protest to the Soviets about the unacceptable potential dangers to the embassy staff. Some of them later developed rare cancers. So yeah, this has been a known threat for decades. The U.S. government knew exactly what was possible. This right here is a declassified CIA slide from 1972 that's over 50 years ago, and it's literally illustrating the concept of a directed microwave attack. U.S. intelligence knew this technology existed, and they absolutely understood how it could be used as a weapon. Investigative journalists have really zeroed in on a specific culprit: GRU Unit 29155. This is a notorious Russian military intelligence unit known for things like sabotage and assassinations. And the case against them really comes down to motive, means, and opportunity. The motive? The victims were often top officers working specifically on Russian issues. The means? Well, a GRU engineer got an award for developing a non-lethal acoustic weapon. And the opportunity? Members of this exact unit have been geolocated near HI incidents in multiple countries. Now, with this much evidence pointing to an actual attack, you'd probably expect a unified, aggressive response from the U.S. government, right? But what's emerged instead is a story of deep internal division and an official investigation that seems to be in complete disarray. The House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, that's the group in Congress that's supposed to oversee the CIA and other agencies, launched its own investigation into the official response. And what they found was, frankly, shocking. Their report concluded that the official intelligence community assessment, the one that found it was very unlikely a foreign adversary was responsible, lacked, and I'm quoting here, analytic integrity. Now that's polite Washington speak for saying the investigation was deeply flawed and probably rushed just to control the story. And yet, despite all the evidence from journalists and that scathing report from Congress, the official White House line has not changed. In April of 2024, the press secretary was still saying that the intelligence community has not concluded Russia was involved. It just shows this huge disconnect between different parts of the U.S. government. And while the government debates, the human toll just keeps growing. As of January 2024, this is the number of people who have qualified for care for an anomalous health incident, just within the military health system. 334. These are dedicated public servants and their family members. And behind every single one of those numbers is a story like Mark Palomiro-Paulos's, the CIA officer from the very beginning of our explainer. His life, his career, cut short. He now lives with a constant headache, and he says he has only a few hours of productive work in him each day. This is the lasting reality for the victims. It's a daily struggle that official denials and these inconclusive reports do absolutely nothing to help. So where does all of this leave us? Well, we're left with a deeply unsettling and still unresolved mystery, with very credible evidence pointing in completely opposite directions. So let's just quickly summarize what we know. The evidence for an attack is pretty compelling. You've got hundreds of consistent witness accounts, a plausible scientific mechanism, geolocation data placing Russian operatives at the scene, and that clear historical precedent. But the evidence against an attack is also significant. No one has ever found a smoking gun weapon. The official intelligence community says it's very unlikely, and a big NIH study found no signs of actual physical brain injury in a group of these patients. And so we're left with this final, profound question. Are we witnessing the deployment of a terrifying new weapon of war, one that can injure from a distance without leaving a trace? Or are we seeing a powerful, almost contagious malady of the mind, something born from the unique pressures of the clandestine world? The answer is still hidden, but the consequences for the people affected and for international security could not be more real.